What is the worst thing you have ever witnessed someone do to their spouse? My uncle acted as the attorney for a man divorcing his 15-year wife. They divided everything 50/50 after a rather ugly breakup, even the property on which their home was situated. She made the decision to construct a house just behind the previous one. Keep in mind that there was a significant amount of land, roughly 200 yards, between the two home sites. As a result, the homes' backs faced one another. As the home is being built, my uncle receives a call from a customer who wants to know if a scenario he got himself into is legal. He was constantly seeing his ex-wife, who apparently spent a lot of time in her backyard. He purchased a female dog and gave it the same name as his former spouse. He would shout, "Susan, you B-word, get in here," whenever he allowed his dog back inside after she had been outside. If she was urinating on the flowers, he would also scream, "Stop urinating on the flowers, Susan," or "Stop digging in the dirt, Susan, you B-word." Because the dog was registered under Susan's name and was, in reality, a female dog, the ex-wife called the police on him a few occasions, but they were unable to stop him. There you have it. Although they had been apart for 10 years, the couple only formally filed for divorce a few years ago. He faxed her the ownership transfer documents after burning down his house since she was going to inherit it. However, he may face jail time for arson. I was employed at a legal firm that was subpoenaed because one of its partners was divorcing another partner at a large law firm. Over 70 subpoenas were sent by the lady to banks, businesses, financial firms, and more. She was certain that he had secretly stashed away more than $20 million abroad. She dug old receipts from 25 years ago in an attempt to piece together his vast scheme since it had become so horrible. The judge ultimately declared this to be absurd after she had incurred $1.5 million in legal bills and hired 7 different attorneys. You have no right to a share of this imaginary $20 million, and there was no conspiracy. Keep in mind that he was a partner in a large legal firm. She reportedly went insane, despite earning millions of dollars annually throughout her career. A restraining order was sought against the spouse by the bad separation wife. So typical. Not a bad man, but not a fantastic one either. His mother was dying 1 year after the divorce. Before his ex-wife passed away, he urged his sister to talk to her and to bring the children to visit her in the hospital. The wife didn't. Rather, she went to court and claimed that his attempt to get in touch with her was a violation of the restraining order. You cannot get in touch with someone via a third party. Although he acknowledged it and gave an explanation, he was deemed to have violated the injunction. The wife never took the children to see his mother, who passed away while he was incarcerated. My parents, who practiced law, told me this story. Thus, a car was a major source of conflict between the husband and wife during the divorce process. The husband finally gives in after months of vowing he would never give the wife the automobile in return for something wonderful, such as one of their vacation homes. As it turns out, he had been driving the automobile in a large circle around the city for 3 hours every day, accumulating thousands and thousands of kilometers that essentially rendered it useless. It was astounding how much malice and preparation went into that. While in graduate school, I worked as a consultant for 2 divorce lawyers. A professional airline pilot was their client. There was a significant financial gap because his wife worked part-time. The divorce was acrimonious. Tax time arrived throughout the procedure, but before the final decree. My guys are called by the wife's lawyer, who informs them that her accountant has phoned and that they might save almost $8,000 apiece by filing jointly and sharing their W-2s. My boys told the hubby about it. Fuck her, he adds, because losing $8,000 will be much more painful for her than for me. Man, you're as cold as ice. In the Netherlands, if your income falls below a specific threshold, the government will cover the majority of your legal fees. This indicates that if one spouse in a divorce has a regular salary and the other has little to no income, the one with the normal income will have to pay a lot if the divorce procedure takes a long time. I've seen cases go close to absurdly high billable hours since there are several methods to prolong it. But there's a catch to this. Your attorney receives a fixed salary from the government. We still keep track of the hours in these instances because you are obligated to pay your own lawyer if the money you receive after a divorce or anything else beyond a particular amount. This woman, who believed she was cheating on her ex-husband by prolonging the divorce for several years, ended up receiving 40,000 euros. She was sadly forced to give up the most of it right away in order to cover legal fees. There was a feeling of fairness there. Additionally, it repeatedly demonstrates that the attorneys are typically the only ones who truly benefit from conflicts. This banker experienced several instances when a credit card and shared overdraft came up right before a divorce, completely surprising one of the parties. Naturally, drained to nothing. It's particularly awful when young children or students experience heartbreak following a breakup and are saddled with unmanageable debt. I knew a man whose wife had an affair with another man, had that man's child, and kept it a secret from him. They then begin the divorce process for other reasons. After a paternity test, the husband discovers that the child is not his, but the court decides that he must still pay child support since it is in the child's best interests. I managed a divorce between a guy who worked as a clerk at CVS and a woman who was a teacher. I spoke for the wife. The lady provided for herself, her husband, and their 2 kids, thereby making her the family's breadwinner. I should mention that one of the kids had severe autism and needed costly, time-consuming schooling and rehabilitation. The husband, who was living alone at the time of the divorce, filed a temporary spousal support lawsuit against the wife, who was raising both children. It came out as slimy, even though he complied with all the legal requirements to get it. The judge spent 20 minutes ripping the husband a new one while disputing every fact on the day of the hearing. He described him as a repulsive being who embodied all of society's ills. The judge then revealed to us that he had no choice but to provide spousal support. But he made it clear to everyone that he didn't think highly of the husband. The spouse kept telling my sobbing client, "Screw you," just like Goodfellas as we were leaving the court. It truly was the worst of humanity. I'm not a divorce attorney, but as a banker, I get to know people's private lives, and this is what one of my clients told me. In essence, the divorce was straightforward, but as a professional, I had no business knowing why. However, I'm concerned about his finances. My partner was the household's primary provider. I think he was a construction foreman, therefore he was in charge of organizing, compensating, and supervising his staff. He was excellent. His wife apparently wanted everything. The fact that she stole the boat, which he had bought before ever meeting her, however, was what irritated him the most. The amusing issue is that she lacks the funds for a vehicle or anything else to transfer the boat. In order to depart his boat, he had to legally relocate it to a location where she was residing using his vehicle. His boat was gone. At the conclusion, he inquired about my age. I informed him of 21. He advised me against getting married. In the end, I will be able to keep all I own. I witnessed a future ex-wife vehemently contest a career military man's disability payments who was not yet retired. Legal expenses were little to her, and she had a new man to finance her. Because of her soon-to-be ex-husband's unpaid disability benefits, she prolonged the asset distribution and divorce processes for months. How much would she have been entitled to in total? $400 or so. That was prior to the Supreme Court's ruling that disability payments are not a part of a marriage. It was some really trivial nonsense. The first divorce between a husband and wife and a kid. The wife is granted child custody. Child support is paid by the first husband. The wife weds husband number 2. The child is adopted by the second husband, since husband number 2 is now legally the father. Husband number 1 is no longer responsible for child support. The second wife and husband file for divorce. Husband number 2 is required to provide child support for the kid as a result of the adoption. The wife remarries her first husband. The kid currently resides with the biological father, husband number 1, and the adoptive father, husband number 2, is still required to pay child support. My wife informed me about this one since she practices divorce law. Despite having separate bedrooms and other living arrangements, the couple continued to live together throughout the divorce proceedings. When the husband would purchase a snack, such as chips or crackers, he would bring it home to his soon-to-be ex-wife, who would never open the bag and instead smash it until it was reduced to dust. He would therefore always be let down when he went to consume a snack that he believed to be novel. For this, he was also not granted a restraining order or anything else. But he was furious about the dust nibbles. When I worked as a court clerk, we dealt with a lot of divorce cases. You'd be surprised at how often individuals bring naked photos of their soon-to-be ex-partners to court as proof. The images are just meant to embarrass them, not because they have anything to do with divorce proceedings. Anybody who wants to look can access the court file and all of the exhibits because, unless the judge seals them, court files are public records. The most miserable division is family court. Avoid sending someone naked photos. The wife discovered that her husband had cheated on her. She returned to their former home one day and filled all the curtain rods with shrimp. The spouse, who was attempting to sell the house, was unable to identify the source of the odor. Because of the stench, he sells it for a huge loss and below its true value. It was ultimately purchased by the wife. The spouse was a decent man who provided for the family and he was a nice father to the children. The wife, who had cheated on him, wanted everything, even the man's soul, despite his desire to end the divorce as quietly as possible. They both ended up accruing thousands of dollars in additional legal bills over a vase and a journal, but she was granted the house, child custody, and alimony. The husband's grandma owned both items. They were the only items she had before coming to the US that survived the Holocaust. In the end, the judge decided that the wife also received those goods. As soon as she had them, she burnt the notebook and used a hammer to crush the vase. She placed the fragments of the vase and the journal's ashes in the doorway of his one-bedroom apartment, which he had to move into due to financial constraints. I worked on this matter for the lawyer, a successful local investment dealer, robust practice with a wealthy clientele. The wife runs a modest business in the neighborhood, a hobby. Doesn't actually make money. Been attempting to conceive for a few years, collaborating with reproductive clinics and physicians. At last, the wife becomes pregnant. A 1 in a million opportunity, is given birth to a son. Now fast forward a few months. The wife makes a day excursion to the large city a few hours away since she needs to go to the market for her business. In anticipation of this, the spouse uses the chance to have the child tested for paternity rather than his own. He was tested when they first arrived at the reproductive clinic and was informed that he was unsuccessful. He then gets in touch with my employer and his lawyer, and we begin the plan. We have a PI follow his wife while we prepare the case. He goes with her to a few doctor's appointments, tennis lessons, the country club every day for lunch, and to hang out with her pals. Her birthday is celebrated at the country club by her pals. This is our chance. I inquire her name aloud as I serve her the divorce papers, and then I reveal the cause for the split. Adultery. A blank county court appearance is mandated for you, blah blah. Her pals are in disbelief. She and her buddies are all cheating in the same circles, according to discovery. We appear in court, provide proof that the spouse is not the father, and ask that his name be struck from the birth certificate. The judge requires her to provide a list of everyone she had sex with during the reasonable window of conception because she does not want the kid to end up as a state ward. She gives the list. 10 guys representing a wide range of personalities arrive for the subsequent court session. 2 cooks, a trust fund prince, an architect, a doctor, a tennis teacher, and a few more people to complete the mix. She didn't include John Doe Jr. when she stated John Doe, even though he was the father of the person they truly needed. Everyone was required to submit to a DNA test. Our client is successful in obtaining no alimony, no child support, and the removal of his name from the birth certificate. The wife and the baby daddy come to an agreement on child support and payments for a number of years. She does triumph in the end. The doctor was the one. She must leave the neighborhood, and the doctor will cover the cost of her relocation as part of the arrangement. Signed the NDA. The doctor had to safeguard his reputation and identity since he was quite wealthy. Due to the child's assured support, the court permitted no father to be included on the birth certificate. A trust fund. When the husband closed on their home, the wife was at work, but he took his mother, who signed the documents. Years later, after their divorce, the wife requests the house but receives a warning from the mother to vacate. The wife was unaware that they were making rent payments. I was asked to manage an enforcement case following a divorce. The man had a debt of around $5,000 that had not been paid for several years and had previously been reduced to judgment. He wanted the judgment to be enforced against the money he discovered she was taking away, so he sought out. Since she lacked insurance, the money was gathered through a firehouse benefit dinner for cancer treatments. I said no. I once had a fantastic customer who detested his wife. He was required to pay 3,000 rupees a month in interim maintenance. This man collects $3,000 in 1 rupee coins from the bank and presents them to his wife in court. It is lawful in theory. He claims he wants the bag back after the wife was forced to appear in court and count all the cash. It's his bag, technically. Thus, this woman has 3,000 coins and no means of transporting them home. He was a wicked genius. I'm not a lawyer, but I was a paralegal once. When I tried to hunt for it, I couldn't recall the name of the case I read about. Prior to the marriage, the husband possessed almost 90% of the party's $15 million worth of assets. The husband intended to leave the wife penniless, and the courts wanted to give the wife around $2 million and give the husband the remainder. By filing pointless motions and generally being like a jerk, he ended up using all of his money to fight every step of the way. The parties had around $500,000 left over after paying attorney fees, fines, charges, and money lost on scams. He was left penniless after the courts gave the wife the whole amount. This guy wins the lotto. Millions. He never informs his wife. She is technically entitled to half. He only needs to record it on tax papers, which his wife invariably signs blindly, since the tax has already been collected. Separation. Husband doesn't cause any trouble. Her attorney suggests that she accept a sizable divorce payment. He relocates to a nearby town and leads a typical life, gradually drifting away from everyone he knows. After that, he moves once again, losing contact with everyone. At that point, he begins to spend the money. It's a bit of a story, but let's get started. The man has spent his entire life on the farm his family owns. The father had already died, but his mother now resides with him. One day, when he begins to get a little older himself, his mother advises him to marry a wife. He locates a person on the internet. Anyway, she already has a teenage daughter. They are all living together on the property as things progress. He chooses to let her take care of the books while he handles the farming. When the wife realizes how much money this man truly has, she begins to spend a lot of it. She begins purchasing pricey items, sends the daughter to prestigious schools and so on, but she fails to pay the farm's costs. The mortgage on the land remained in effect. He discovers out after receiving a call from the bank informing him that nothing has been paid and that he is past due. He loses the property in the end. He and his wife had a heated disagreement. Despite the fact that the house was originally theirs, she has him and his mother expelled, and they part ways. He departs for the city. It bothers him. He had spent his entire life farming in the country, after all. He thus gives his pal a call and requests permission to return to town and stay at his house. He gets to the home of his friend. The companion is not present. He discovers his ex-wife and her daughter instead. He lost his temper. He murdered them both by shooting them with a pistol he seized from his car. My spouse, an attorney, has told me a few anecdotes. When the woman learned that her husband was abusing their 5-year-old kid, she petitioned for custody and left him. The spiteful sob claimed that his wife had abused the daughter in order to deny her custody as well. When the girl visited his wife's parents, the husband suddenly recalled that the wife had also been abused by her parents. Once more, all of this was done to deny the wife custody. While the investigations continued, the wife and her parents were exonerated, and the girl spent a full year in foster care. After serving time, the father is now permitted to visit under supervision. Then there was a woman who was married to a man who made his profession selling firearms and who had a deep love for hunting. Knowing that he would no longer be permitted to possess or carry firearms, she accused him of domestic abuse. After inviting her soon-to-be ex to get back together, a lady going through a divorce charmed him, served him wine, and then kicked him out of the house. She reported spotting someone swerving on the road and phoned the police. Because of the DUI, he was arrested, transported to jail, and lost his job. Driving was part of his profession. Finally, the guy promised his wife that if she did not seek spousal support or ask to divide any assets, he would relinquish custody of his twin girls. The divorce was finalized once she consented. He claimed that he could better care for the twins since he had a large home and she just had an apartment, that he earned more money, and other such claims on the day the papers were signed. He informed his lawyer that he wanted to leave her as little as possible. He pursued one of them and permanently divided the twins when the judge refused to give him custody, according to their prior agreement. There are countless tales, but in general, the ones that most disgust me went like this. The wife has a child. The husband is completely uninterested in the child and even gets upset when the youngster diverts his attention. It informs the wife that she bears all financial and other responsibility for the kid. The wife understands that her husband is a bad partner because he is a bad dad. In fact, she would prefer to be a single mom than put up with his man-baby antics. A petition for divorce is submitted. The husband's attorney informs him that he will be required to pay less child support the more time he spends with his child. The spouse begins attending doctor's visits, engaging in activities with the kid, and generally becoming a parent. The parties are no longer together. The husband is a loving father and has a 50/50 timeshare. The wife's only desire was for her husband to show interest in the kid, but she had to pursue a divorce in order to achieve this. When I was a legal clerk, I had this case. The wife and 2 children relocated with the husband since he had a fancy job and was stationed overseas. While the wife was a stay-at-home mother with no source of income, he had a very high salary that covered all of his costs. After the marriage failed and they returned to Sweden, the wife filed a lawsuit for alimony, to which she was legally entitled, so that she could care for the children every other week. She struggled to re-enter the workforce after being unemployed for several years. No savings, etc. The spouse, who essentially had no expenses to pay for years, suddenly claimed to be broke as well. He had just about $1 million, and in order to have a place to live, he was forced to spend it on an apartment in one of the priciest areas in town. Remember to click the bell to enable alerts when you subscribe.